Title 9, Revised Penal Code, Crimes Against Personal Liberty and Security. Chapter 1, Crimes Against Liberty. Article 267, Kidnapping and Serious Illegal Detention. Any private individual who shall kidnap or detain another or in any other manner deprive him of his liberty shall suffer the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death. 1. If the kidnapping or detention shall have lasted more than 3 days. 2. If it shall have been committed simulating public authority. 3. If any serious physical injuries shall have been inflicted upon the person kidnapped or detained, or if the threats to kill him shall have been made. 4. If the person kidnapped or detained shall be a minor, except when the accused is any of the parents, female, on a public officer. The penalty shall be death where the kidnapping or detention was committed for the purpose of extorting ransom from the victim or any other person, even if none of the circumstances above mentioned were present in the commission of the offense. When the victim is killed or dies as a consequence of the detention, or is raped, or is subjected to torture or dehumanizing acts, the maximum penalty shall be imposed. Article 268. Slight illegal detention. The penalty of reclusion temporal shall be imposed upon any private individual who shall commit the crimes described in the next preceding article without the attendance of any of the circumstances enumerated therein. The same penalty shall be incurred by anyone who shall furnish the place for the perpetration of the crime. If the offender shall voluntarily release the person so kidnapped or detained within 3 days from the commencement of the detention without having attained the purpose intended and before the institution of criminal proceedings against him, the penalty shall be prison mayor in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos. Article 269, Unlawful Arrest. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who, in any case other than those authorized by law, or without reasonable ground therefore, shall arrest or detain another for the purpose of delivering him to the proper authorities. Section 2, Kidnapping of Minors. Article 270, Kidnapping and failure to return a minor. The penalty of reclusion perpetua shall be imposed upon any person who, being entrusted with the custody of a minor person, shall deliberately fail to restore the latter to his parents or guardian. Article 271, Inducing a minor to abandon his home. The penalty of prison correctional and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who shall induce a minor to abandon the home of his parents or guardians, or the person entrusted with his custody. If the person committing any of the crimes covered by the 2 preceding articles shall be the father or mother of the minor, the penalty shall be arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 40,000 pesos. Section 3, Slavery and Servitude. Article 272, Slavery. The penalty of prison mayor or a fine and a fine of not exceeding 10,000 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who shall purchase, sell, kidnap, or detain a human being for the purpose of enslaving him. If the crime be committed for the purpose of assigning the offended party to some immoral traffic, the penalty shall be imposed in its maximum period. Article 273, Exploitation of Child Labor. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone under the pretext of reimbursing himself of a debt incurred by an ascendant, guardian, or a person entrusted with the custody of a minor, shall, against the latter's will, retain him in his service. Article 274. Services rendered under compulsion in payment of debt. The penalty of arresto mayor in its maximum period to prison correctional in its minimum period shall be imposed upon any person who, in order to require or enforce the payment of a debt, shall compel the debtor to work for him, against his will, as a household servant or farm laborer. Chapter 2, Crimes Against Security, Section 1, Abandonment of Helpless Persons and Exploitation of Minors. Article 275, Abandonment of Persons in Danger and Abandonment of one's own victim. The penalty of arresto mayor shall be imposed upon 1. Anyone who shall fail to render assistance to any person whom he shall find in an uninhabited place, wounded, or in danger of dying, when he can render such assistance without detriment to himself, unless such omission shall constitute a more than serious offense. 2. Anyone who shall fail to help or render assistance to another whom he has accidentally wounded or injured. 3. Anyone who, having found an abandoned child under 7 years of age, shall fail to deliver said child to the authorities or to his family, or shall fail to take him to a safe place. Article 276. Abandoning of minor. Abandoning a minor. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who shall abandon a child under 7 years of age, the custody of which is incumbent upon him. When the death of the minor shall result from such abandonment, the culprit shall be punished by prison correctional in its medium and maximum periods. But if the life of the minor shall have been in danger only, the penalty shall be prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods. The provisions contained in the two preceding paragraphs shall not prevent the imposition of the penalty provided for an act committed when the same shall constitute a more serious offense. Article 277, Abandonment of minor by person entrusted with his custody in deference of parents. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who, having charge of the rearing or education of a minor, shall deliver said minor to a public institution or other persons without the consent of the one who entrusted such child to his care, or in the absence of the latter, without the consent of the proper authorities. The same penalty shall be imposed upon the parents who shall neglect their children by not giving them the education which their station in life requires and financial condition permits. Article 278, Exploitation of Minors. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos shall be imposed upon 1. Any person who shall cause any boy or girl under 16 years of age to perform any dangerous feat of balancing, physical strength, or consortium. 2. Any person who, being an acrobat, gymnast, rope walker, diver, wild animal tamer, or circus manager, or engaged in a similar calling, shall employ in exhibition of these kinds of children, under 16 years of age who are not his children or descendants. 3. Any person engaged in any of the callings enumerated in the next preceding paragraph, who shall employ any descendant of his under 12 years of age in such dangerous exhibition. 4. Any ascendants, guardian, teacher, or person entrusted in any capacity with the care of a child under 16 years of age, who shall deliver such child gratuitously to any person following any of the callings enumerated in paragraph 2 hereof, or to any habitual vagrant or beggar. If the delivery shall have been made in consideration of any price, compensation, or promise, the penalty shall in every case be imposed in its maximum period. In either case, the guardian or curator convicted shall also be removed from office as guardian or curator, and in the case of the parents of the child, they may be deprived temporarily or perpetually in the discretion of the court of their parental authority. 5. Any person who shall induce any child under 16 years of age to abandon the home of its ascendants, guardians, curators, or teachers, to follow any person engaged in any of the calling mentioned in paragraph 2 hereof, or to accompany any habitual vagrant or beggar. Article 279. Additional penalties for other offenses. The imposition of the penalties in the preceding articles shall not prevent the imposition upon the same person of the penalty provided for any other felonies defined and punished by this code. Section 2, Trespass to dwelling, Article 280. Qualified trespass to dwelling. Any private person who shall enter the dwelling of another against the latter's will shall be punished by arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 200,000 pesos. If the offense be committed by means of violence or intimidation, the penalty shall be prison correctional in its medium and maximum periods, and a fine not exceeding 200,000 pesos. The provision of this article shall not be applicable to any person who shall enter another's dwelling for the purpose of preventing some serious harm to himself, the occupants of the dwelling, or a third person, nor shall it be applicable to any person who shall enter a dwelling for the purpose of rendering some service to humanity or justice, nor to anyone who shall enter cafe, taverns, inns, and other public houses while same are open. Article 281. Other forms of trespass. The penalty of arresto mayor, or a fine not exceeding 40,000 pesos or both, shall be imposed upon any person who shall enter the closed premises or the fenced estate of another while either or both of them are uninhabited, if the provision to enter be manifest and the trespasser has not secured the permission of the owner or the caretaker thereof. Section 3, Threats and Coercion. Article 282, Grave threats. Any person who shall threaten another with the infliction upon the person, honor, or property of the latter, or of his any person who shall threaten another with the infliction upon the person, honor, or property of the latter, or of his family, of any wrong amounting to a crime, shall suffer 1. The penalty next lower in degree than that prescribed by law for the crime he threatened to commit, if the offender shall have made the threat demanding money or imposing any other condition, even though not unlawful. The said offender shall have attained his purpose. If the offender shall not have attained his purpose, the penalty lower by 2 degrees shall be imposed. If the threat be made in writing or through a middleman, the penalty shall be imposed in its maximum periods. 2. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos if the threat shall have been made subject to a condition. Article 283. Light threats. A threat to commit a wrong not constituting a crime made in the manner expressed in subdivision 1 of the next preceding shall again light threats. A threat to commit a wrong not constituting a crime made in the manner expressed in subdivision 1 of the next preceding article shall be punished by arresto mayor. Article 284. Banned for good behavior. In all cases falling within the two next preceding articles, the person making the threats may also be required to give bail, not to molest the person threatened, or if he shall fail to give such bail, he shall be sentenced to dischero. Article 285. Other light threats. The penalty of arresto minor in its minimum period or a fine not exceeding 40,000 pesos shall be imposed upon 1. Any person without being included in the provisions of the next preceding article shall threaten another with a weapon or draw such weapon in a quarrel unless it will be a lawful defense. 2. Any person who in the heat of anger shall orally threaten another in some harm not constituting a crime, or who by subsequent acts shows that he did not persist in the idea involved in his threat, provided that the circumstances of the offense shall not bring it within the provisions of Article 282 of this code. 3. Any person who shall orally threaten to do another any harm not constituting a felony. Article 286, grave coercion. The penalty of prison correctional and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who, without any authority of law, shall by means of violence, threat, or intimidation, prevent another from doing something not prohibited by law or to compel him to do something against his will, whether it be right or wrong. If the coercion be committed in violation of the exercise of the right of suffrage or for the purpose of compelling another to perform any religious act or to prevent him from exercising such right or from so doing such act, the penalty next higher in degree shall be imposed. Article 287, light coercion. Any person by means of violence shall seize anything belonging to his debtor for the purpose of applying the same to the payment of the debt, shall suffer the penalty of arresto mayor in its minimum period and a fine equivalent to the value of the thing, but in no case less than 15,000 pesos. Any person, any other coercion or unjust vexation shall be punished by arresto minor or a fine ranging from 1,000 pesos to not more than 40,000 pesos or both. Article 288. Other similar coercions. Compulsory purchase of merchandise and payment of wages by means of tokens. The penalty of arresto mayor or a fine ranging from 40,000 pesos to 100,000 pesos or both shall be imposed upon any person, agent, or officer of any association or corporation who shall force or compel directly or indirectly or shall knowingly permit any laborer or employee employed by him or by such firm or corporations to be forced or compelled to purchase merchandise or commodities of any kind. The same penalties shall be imposed upon any person who shall pay the wages due to a laborer or employee employed by him by means of tokens or objects other than the legal tender currency of the Philippines, unless expressly requested by the laborer or employee.